Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm Kristan Hawkins. Recently, we hosted a pro-life generation town hall at Students for Life Action with U.S. Congressman Mike Johnson. Congressman Johnson is a known pro-life champion in the House of Representatives on Capitol Hill. But before that, he actually helped defend Louisiana's abortion facility regulations law, which is right now, in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and will be decided very soon, in the coming days, actually. Congressman Johnson is the son of a teenage mom and teenage dad, and he's just has an incredible pro-life story, and it's so awesome to kind of hear his story of how he was created in this situation that most people would say, and Planned Parenthood certainly would say, was not ideal. And yet his parents courageously chose life for him. And to see the life that he has led and the lives that he has saved, it's an extraordinary story. And I think it speaks so eloquently to, the narrative that we try to tell in the pro-life movement all the time of, you never know, right? That the child that's being aborted will never know the legacy that child would have left on this earth. So I really want you to hear this conversation that I had with the congressman. I hope you'll appreciate it. And really, I'll be giving you some information too about what's going on Capitol Hill and how we can continue to lobby our elected officials, and some things we really need to be paying attention to. So I look forward to working with the congressman more on Capitol Hill, but I hope this serves as a really good introduction to you, to him, and to know that it's not all bad on Capitol Hill and that there are courageous leaders there. So hey everyone, I'm Kristan with Students for Life and Students for Life Action. Thanks for getting on tonight. We are so excited to have you on this very special pro-life gen town hall. We have U.S. Representative Mike Johnson. He is a leader in the U.S. House of Representatives. He's from the great state of Louisiana, and we are so excited to have him on tonight for this interview to kind of get to know him better and hear his heart about this issue, and also get some of his thoughts about the current COVID crisis and how that plays into what we're doing in the pro-life movement. If you all have been keeping track, the abortion lobby has been doing a lot recently in Washington, D.C., trying to really use the COVID crisis for their own benefit. And we've had to kind of keep our eye on them, and it's going to continue, and especially when we talk about chemical abortions. So I really wanted to have the congressman on tonight. Congressman Johnson, he actually was one of the leaders who spoke out against the ratification of the ERA, the Everything Related to Abortion Act. We were so thankful for that. The ERA, as you all know, you've been getting emails and text messages from me about, it's not dead. And it really, what really died before I was born. But the abortion industry has another plan for it. And the reason they have another plan for it is because they're desperate, because we are the pro-life generation and we're winning. And we have states like Louisiana are some of the most pro-life states in the country that are protecting children, shutting down abortion facilities, and truly serving mothers in crisis. So Congressman, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask, I have a few questions for you, but then also if folks have questions, they can go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll try to make sure to condense them so we can get started here. So some of my simple questions, I have just the first one's more personal. Why is it that this issue of abortion is so important to you as a leader there up on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, I was involved in this issue on the front lines of the battle for the sanctity of human life way before I got to Congress. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. And right out of law school, in fact, my first case ever that I ever had was an abortion malpractice case. And it's a long story. And one day I'm convinced there's going to be a book written about the saga. But it was a poor young lady from South Louisiana who was maimed at the Delta Women's Clinic in Baton Rouge, which was infamous at the time as one of the filthiest places anywhere. And very, very long story short, in the course of discovery of that litigation, we uncovered some pretty astounding, shocking information. We got video inside the clinic of rusted surgical instruments and bloody operating procedure rooms, just filthy conditions. And that video was used on the floor of the Louisiana legislature by a young a state representative at the time named Tony Perkins, who now runs the FRC. And together we worked on with Dorinda Bordley and some friends of ours at Americans United for Life. And we drafted, that was the catalyst for us to draft the first clinic regs for a long, long time. And those became a model for other states. And so that was the start of my career doing that. And that was in 1998, way back when. And so we've been in this battle ever since. We've been litigating against the industry, trying to clean it up to protect women. And I did a lot of legal work. I was an attorney. I did a lot of legal work for crisis pregnancy centers around the region, around the country, and tried to always work on those issues. I was a litigator for the Alliance Defense Fund for over a dozen years, and kind of my subspecialty was the pro-life work. So this is in my DNA. It's who I am. Part of the reason is, and you asked me personally why I'm motivated to do it, is that I'm personally the result of a teen pregnancy. My parents were dated since the 7th grade, and I was conceived their junior year in high school. And this was in 1972, a year before Roe. And a lot of their friends tried to convince my mom, who was just barely 17 at the time, to take care of the problem. And thankfully, they were raised with values that they just, something in them told them that was wrong. And so here I am, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And so this is real, it's personal to me. And there's a reason that we do this. And, I'm motivated by my faith, and I understand, and we all understand, that God is the author of life. The founders of this country believe that. It's part of the reason I became a constitutional law attorney, is because I believe in those time-honored principles and the ideas that are articulated in the Declaration. That these are self-evident truths. No one can deny this, that our rights and our liberties derive from God himself, and the state should never be allowed, no state, no other man should ever be allowed to take that away. And that's why we're in this battle. And I'm so encouraged when young people do it and join the ranks, because this is, and you are, the pro-life generation. And I think we can turn the tide on this. I think that, we're just 1 or 2 cases away potentially of overturning Roe and having a brand new, having the table reset for the country. And that's going to be a great day. But the battle's just going to begin then, as you know, because then it devolves to each state. And so we're so grateful for what you guys are doing, and really grateful to be with you. And I'll share any insight I can tonight.
And that's, to be honest with you, that's the thought that keeps me up at night, is that moment when Roe is reversed. Are we going to be prepared? Do we have, and that's why we focus so hard on getting Students for Life groups in all the states, and getting all the students out to state capitals to do lobby days, to do mobilizations, because really it's not going to be me. It's not going to be our team of, 50. It's going to be everyone who's going to be required to be at their state capitals. And thankfully your state there in Louisiana, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. But then the question,
number one.
Yes, you are. You're number one. But then the question becomes, do we have all the resources in place when she's no longer able to legally choose to end the life of her child? And that's something they were grateful to be able to work with some legislators in Virginia on just this past legislative term, talking about foster care reform and adoption reform, and making sure you have that actual culture of life and you have those resources in place. All right. So to start talking about, I guess, the current crisis, the COVID crisis, you all have been very busy up there. I just got a text right as this started from some Planned Parenthood thing asking me to call members of Congress. What do we need to be paying attention and looking for in light of this COVID crisis with what the abortion industry is up to?
So a number of things. First, we've had to be very vigilant about protecting the Paycheck Protection Program and the other coronavirus relief funds from going into the hands of Planned Parenthood. And, they're conniving and trying to deceive in every way to get their hands on that money. And the latest bill, we were successful in the first few phases of the coronavirus, the CARES Act, and the other relief that's come forward. But this bill that just passed the House on Friday against all of our objection, Pelosi's bill, has no high protections in it. Now, thankfully, that bill has no chance of becoming law, and it'll be dead on arrival in the Senate. It already is. But it goes to show you what they're up to. And they've tried every way to get abortion funding in this, and they've claimed that these are essential services, and you've heard all these crazy arguments. So we've had to be very vigilant about that, and we'll have to do that continuing, going forward. And we've got to be looking, I think, forward about some of the things that we think can be coming down the pipe. Now, this is an election year, of course, and this is for all the marbles. I mean, this election can decide the fate of the republic. I mean, that's not hyperbole. It is truly what's at stake. And we're working really hard. I'm working really hard to get President Trump reelected, and for the Republicans to win the majority back in the House. I chair the Republican Study Committee right now. That's the largest caucus of conservatives. We have 148 members in there. They're all pro-lifers. These are all your fellow warriors, and we understand that the stakes couldn't be any higher. We have about 17 or 18 different pro-life bills that are filed in this Congress. I've co-sponsor all those, but they won't move because the speaker and the majority party hold all the cards, as you know how it works. So I serve on the House Judiciary Committee. I'm the ranking member of the Constitution Subcommittee. We cannot get a hearing on any of these bills. They will not allow us to bring them up. And so elections have consequences, as we all know. And this is, I could argue that there's never been a more important time for us to be active and involved and engaged, because on the life issue and on so many more broader issues about the future of the country and how we're going to recover post-pandemic and all the rest, we have to have people with the right principles and the right seats on the bus, so to speak. So, I'm grateful for all you guys are doing. And there's another thing too that relates directly to Louisiana, and will have a big bearing on a lot of this, and that's the Supreme Court's opinion in the June Medical Services versus Russo case. And that's a case that's near and dear to my heart, because I actually was the litigator. I defended the state's regulations in the federal district court 5 years ago when that was in its early stages. And now life comes full circle, and now I help lead the amicus brief on behalf of 207 members of Congress in support of the state. And if you haven't followed that case, that's the admitting privileges case, and it's the first one that we have with the new conservative majority, with both President Trump's appointments on the court, and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh could make the difference. And I think they will. I think they'll uphold the state's right to regulate in this area, these common sense health and safety regulations. This is a big deal. But the bigger thing about that case is that the court, as you all know, also allowed to hear the third party standing argument. And that could be a game changer. I mean, the original issue about health and safety regs is really important, but the third party standing argument could be a game changer. And the reason is because, ever since back in 1998 and before that, when states like Louisiana have enacted health and safety regulations and common sense regulations to protect women against this industry, they've been routinely challenged and struck down in the courts over the years. And they're challenged by these third-party groups, these activist groups out of New York or San Francisco or wherever. They descend upon a state, they find a willing plaintiff, and they file suit. And so the third-party standing argument would say you can't have some national abortion rights group file a lawsuit against a regulation in a particular state. It has to be someone who's genuinely directly affected by that, a woman who is in that jurisdiction. If the court agrees with us on that, that's a whole new day in terms of protecting life. And so we need to be in prayer for the outcome of that. So there's a lot of big issues on the, up in the air right now. And, we had to have all hands on deck at all times.
That's absolutely right. We were out there at the Supreme Court. Our students camped out overnight. It was a little cold and windy, but they did it. They were amazing. And so we were able to kind of hold the rally and have all the different pro-life organizations work together and partner together during the hearing day. But it was chaos out there, to be honest with you, Congressman. It was, they were busting.
I was there. I know. In fact, with Louisiana, the Attorney General, argued the case, and our Solicitor General, Liz Murrell, and I was literally sitting right behind her. And our Attorney General, Jeff Landry, is leaning over, passing notes to me in the middle of oral argument at the Supreme Court. I'm like, we can't do that, Jeff. So it was a wild day, and one we'll always remember. But we were so grateful because, the bad guys were out there too. And it was so great to have Students for Life out there and everybody else who helped, swell the ranks of the pro-lifers so that we could drown out the horrible arguments of the other side. And that was really important.
Yeah, I think being out there, I kind of wish we could take every on the fence voter and stick them out front of the Supreme Court, because they were so extreme, and their rhetoric, the speakers they had. I had one woman screaming at me, had earrings of an alligator eating a baby. I mean, and just unbelievable extremism on display. And I think sometimes when we talk about abortion activists and pro-abortion folks, I think a lot of people get turned off. They're like, no one really likes abortion. Maybe they tolerate because of this case, but these were extremists out there. And I think it shows you how important 2020 is, that they're basically feeling like they have nothing else left to lose. And when your political enemy gets desperate, that's when they can get very dangerous. And that's exactly what we saw out there. That's why we saw what we saw with Kavanaugh hearings and the next Supreme Court opening. It's going to be even worse. And I actually have a lot of sympathy for whoever gets nominated. Someone just asked a question in chat. We should know the SCOTUS decision by June. We were going to have a rally out there, Darby, but because of COVID, we probably will have to do a virtual rally. But usually the court releases the most controversial decisions, that's usually about abortion, at the end of the term. So it'll be right before the 4th of July holiday. So stay tuned looking for that. All right, Congressman, what do you think we need to be doing better? You sponsored legislation that would prevent pregnant minors from being taken across state borders without clear notification of parents. Something that I've been really focusing on right now is preparing for the day after the election to really push the administration and the president to bar Planned Parenthood for all of their crimes. But one of the things that really hasn't been explored is this challenge of these young girls coming into Planned Parenthoods. If you look at the states and you look at who's calling the hotline saying, suspected statutory rape, suspected child abuse, and then you look at the abortion numbers and they're not lining up. Right. We know just from Planned Parenthood and reports how many young women and young girls they're seeing. And they're, as mandated reporters, they aren't making these calls. And so your law would definitely help if there's parental notification and parental consent. What else can we do as the pro-life movement to be pushing for that type of legislation and really kind of keeping this this talking point out there, is that Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry are preying off of these young girls who are already being victimized by these older men, these relationships that they are in, and they're never getting help when they go to the Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they're violating state laws in every case when they do that. And we know that this is ubiquitous across the abortion industry, is that they routinely don't report those incidences, and they're mandatory reporters, as you said. So I think a part of it is the continuing kind of public awareness campaign to present this information and to say this is a very pro-woman initiative. I mean, we're trying to protect women who are vulnerable, particularly, in this case, minors who are being manipulated by these older men. It's a sinister, sick thing. And I'm personally motivated to do this. Way back in the day, 15 years ago, probably, I was litigating a case to try to prevent an abortion. Some parents, there was a 15-year-old girl that was pregnant in North Louisiana. Parents found out about it. They knew that the older man who had impregnated her was trying to take her to get the abortion. And we were successful. We went to the state district court and obtained a temporary restraining order to prevent that from going on, because the parents, of course, the little girl was, emotionally distraught, was not making a rational decision. The parents wanted to help her with the child. And we went into the court, we got the TRO, and it was such a great victory. And then 3 days later, the guy drove into town, picked her up, and drove her across state lines and had the abortion anyway. And it was outside of the jurisdiction of the court. It's just a travesty. And we realized then that there was no federal law to prevent that from happening. Mm-hmm. And so this law is a long time overdue. It's pro-woman, it's pro-women's health. If we're going to protect, the most vulnerable among us, which, our friends on the other side of the aisle say that's what this is all about, then that they should be in favor of this. And anybody who looks at this issue objectively should say, now, look, there are provisions in the law. If the parents of a minor are abusive, or if she's in legitimate fear of telling her, informing her folks, there is a provision around that a court can determine that. But that's the only exception that there should be. And, we can make that compassionate argument, and I know you guys are going to help with that. It's a really important one to do.
Yeah, I would encourage all of y'all to, when we're talking about abortion, really to be talking about this issue of parental consent, parental notification. Dr. Michael New, he's a researcher at Catholic University, has written numerous articles about, the effect of when you pass this type of legislation in states, how many lives it saves. Not only are you protecting young women from these predators and really the cycle that continues, but you're also saving lives. All right, so Congressman, can you tell us a little bit, thinking about COVID and this text message I just got from Planned Parenthood that's made me very angry. What are the battles that we need to be paying attention to? So we have this latest round of stimulus that we know it doesn't have Hyde in it. What are the other battles that are forthcoming that we need to really be keyed into?
Well, one of the things we're trying to be on the lookout for is the rise of, the use of chemical abortions, because there's this move towards telemedicine and kind of
Mm-hmm.
off-site medical treatment and that kind of thing. So there'll be a push, and the other side will say this is very compassionate. This is, what about, the evolving nature of medicine? We need to be able to treat people remotely, and so we'll just mail them a chemical that will induce the abortion, a pill or syringe or whatever it is. We have to be very vigilant about that. The states are going to have to ramp up regulation as offsite medical treatment, and those are good innovations because it helps a lot of people when you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
true medical health. But in the abortion industry, Planned Parenthood and the abortion cartels are going to try their best to
Right.
maximize profits with that, of course, because they always put profit over people. And we got to be watching for that. That's going to be one of these new emerging areas, I think, as telemedicine takes off and becomes more common and more prevalent. And so,
Mm-hmm.
particularly out in the rural areas, it's going to be a big thing to watch. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
have some legislation to try to address that as well. But again, I keep coming back to this same issue that it really comes down to the election outcome. And if if the pro-abort Democrats are allowed to maintain control of the House, we're kind of stuck on go because we can't move this important legislation, and they're never going to allow it in any of the the larger bills. So
That's
um,
right.
got to be really active and engaged in this cycle.
That's absolutely right. And I encourage you, if you all haven't signed up yet, go to voteprolifefirst.com, sign up to be in our Call Our Door Squad. We're going to be making, I think, 1 million phone calls. We want to hit 250,000 doors. We need you. We're already making calls right now. So make sure you sign up to voteprolifefirst.com, and we will train you. And there's a lots of opportunities to even get paid. And we're partnering with our friends at Susan B. Anthony List and sharing data. And that's what's been, you can tell the importance of this election when you have so many organizations working together, many cases for the first time ever, to make sure we have a very concise, unified effort and focusing on the key places. So make sure you sign up at voteprolifefirst.com. Congressman, so let's talk about another question that we got in here. All right. What do you think is the most effective way for a pro-lifer, a pro-life activist to reach out and talk to their elected officials? You're an elected official. What is the best way for us to get in front of you with an issue or something that's developing in our state?
That's a really good question. I mean, I was a state legislator for a few years, and it's easier to access the people in the state legislature because they have a smaller constituency, and you would be, not you guys, but most people would be surprised because y'all are involved and engaged, and but just a little bit of effort goes a long way with a state senator or a state representative, for example, because you'd be surprised how few people actually engage like that. If you get 5 or 7 letters, and I mean original letters, not just like the cut and paste kind of stuff, because we get volumes of all that, but some thoughtful correspondence from just a handful of people can make a difference on an issue, because most people don't engage like that. At the congressional level, it's a little more difficult because each member of the House, for example, has on average 750,000 constituents, and so it's hard to get directly to the members sometimes. But engaging their district level staffs and their staffs on the Hill is really important, because if they hear enough of a ground swell and enough of volume on an issue, they'll bring it to the member and bring it to their attention. Hey, Congressman, Congresswoman, you may want to know this must be a big deal back there because we've got a high volume on this. We get reports, of course, every day on the numbers on pro and con on various pieces of legislation and issues like that. But I would also encourage you, and some of you guys are involved in this, but when you are on Capitol Hill or you do come for a Supreme Court oral argument or something like that, try to schedule a visit to come in and sit down with the members of Congress, because that is a really great outreach tool. And it's remembered, and it makes a difference. There's so much noise when you're a member of Congress. There's so many interest groups and so many voices, but you remember those individual meetings. And particularly, I think you have an advantage as students for life, as young people, because you stand out. You really do. And, we meet with a lot of people in a given week, hundreds of people. But the ones you remember are the more unique groups. And when you have a group of young people, it stands out. And so I would argue, I really believe this, you guys are in a unique place to have a more influential voice than many of the others that are out there. And so you should take advantage of that. And I pray that you will, because at the end of the day, it makes a big difference.
That's one of the reasons we launched Students for Life Action, just so we can get up to Capitol Hill more and fly our squad members there to DC and make sure our voices are heard. I think usually when we go and lobby, we walk into offices and they assume we are with Planned Parenthood because our students look young and are young. And so there's an automatic assumption. And so we've had to be very clear about wearing pro-life t-shirts and showing folks, no, we are actually with the majority of young people who are pro-life.
Right.
All right. So this was be the last question for you. This came in from Hector. He wanted to know, what legal remedies can we take to challenge, this is going to be a little controversial, governors' decision who keep abortion facilities open, yet are closing the churches and keeping them closed right now during COVID?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully that's becoming a moot point now, because I think all 50 states are at some stage of reopening in phase one, and churches ought to be included in the first phases as long as they social distance. But that was a big issue in Louisiana. I know a lot of people listening are in Louisiana, and we fought John Bell directly on that because it was just an extraordinary double standard. And Jeff Landry and I, the Attorney General here, were hammering on him. And John Bell and I go back to law school. We've been battling this stuff for 20 years. Okay. And he professes to be pro-life, but I know better, and I've seen him, many times when he didn't put his mouth where his rhetoric was, and that's just a fact. And this is one of those. And he could have closed those clinics for weeks and never did. And it was a big problem. And the Attorney General's office tried to do everything they could. There was a shortage of medical health officers who could go out and confirm what was happening in the clinics and all that. But the bottom line is, don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise, because I know when I was involved in the conversations directly with the governor, he could have closed those clinics when he didn't, and he closed her. Okay, so that's a fact. It is a moot point now. It's a sad and tragic footnote to history, but we lost hundreds, thousands potentially of unborn children in that interim period. And, we can never get them back. And, that's another thing for the interstate abortion legislation, is that Louisiana became a hub for that because Texas wasn't allowing it, some of the neighboring states, and they were all coming into, the Hope Clinic in Shreveport, and the volume of abortions went up in North Louisiana because of that very thing. And that's just a sad, shocking thing. So I think from a legal standpoint, I think it's a moot point now, but if it arises, if there's another wave, heaven forbid, this thing happens again, we'll be ready and armed for bear. And there's a number of plaintiffs groups I think who'd be ready to take that litigation. And it would be you'd posture it as a temporary restraining order to enforce the law appropriately and equally. And I think we'd have a good shot at that.
Yeah, Richard just wrote in that 3,000 babies were aborted during the corona pandemic in the state of Louisiana. So this is why, folks, this is why politics matters. We say this all the time in Students for Life, that this issue of abortion is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue, but politics is one of the most important battlefields we must engage in, because these policies, these laws, these regulations, they truly matter. And when you have courageous leaders on Capitol Hill, like Congressman Johnson, like Senator Daines, you will see lives saved. And when you don't, you see lives lost. So thank you so much, Congressman, for coming on tonight. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had that you want to share with folks here?
I want to leave y'all with an important thought. And I thought of this a moment ago, and you saw me, I was distracted. I was pulling something up on my phone because you were talking about the competing protests during the Supreme Court argument. And what struck me and what stood out to me was the stark contrast between our side and the other. And you mentioned, the alligator earrings when alligator and a baby. It's just, the darkness is almost inconceivable. And what we always have to remember, and I want to leave you guys with this, it's something I think the Lord taught me a long time ago, and it's made a big difference in my life and in my career and my outlook and my perspective. I used to get so frustrated and even distraught about the darkness we were seeing, particularly on this issue and in so many others around the culture. But remember what the Apostle Paul said to Timothy, his young protege, in the second chapter of Timothy. I just pulled this up real quick, and I have most of this memorized, but I want to read it to you because I want to get every word right. This is out of the NIV, but in 2 Timothy 2, beginning at verse 22, it says, "Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because they produce quarrels." And here's the key verse, 2 Timothy 2, verse 24. "And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful, Opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth, and that they will come to their senses and escape the trap of the devil who has taken them captive to do his will. Listen, in this arena, more than any other, and I mean, I've been, I did litigation for 20 years against the darkest elements of the culture, pornographers, just everything. But in this arena, people are taken captive, okay? And you have to recognize that our battle, as the scripture says, is not against people. It's not against flesh and blood. It's against principalities. This is a spiritual battle that we're in, okay? And remembering that when you're in a protest and you're facing that and they're screaming at you and they're hurling insults at you and calling you terrible names and waving these wretched signs and all that, remember, that the Christ that we serve died for them too. And they're just deceived. And so we've got to love them through it, as hard as that is. So always keep that perspective, and it'll help you keep your chin up and your optimism up. And we try to do that. It's really hard sometimes. It's really hard sometimes, as y'all know. But God's going to honor that, and he'll save people. And there's some great testimonies of people coming out of that whole darkness who have been moved by the compassion and the love and the steady hand of the people that are doing what you guys do. So keep it up, and we're cheering for you and praying that you grow your ranks, because we need you now more than ever.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And thank you for all that you're doing on Capitol Hill. We look forward to working with you. And hopefully when we can get up there for our lobby day, one of our first pro-life Gen lobby days, we can visit your office and all your folks at the Republican Study Committee and what you're doing there. And thank you all for tuning in tonight. Make sure you go to voteprolifefirst.com, sign up for the call or door squad. We are making calls tonight, every night. We're actually helping out some pro-life Democrats in a primary in New Mexico who actually were courageous enough to defeat a very extreme pro-abortion bill and who are now being primaried by the Democratic Party for being pro-life. So make sure you sign up for our call squad, start making calls. We'll train you. Also, I encourage you, I don't know if I'm allowed to announce this yet, but you can go to thisischemicalabortion.com. We are launching a national ad campaign about chemical abortion. So we have got the rights. The producers of Abby's movie, Unplanned, are allowing us to use that chemical abortion scene. We're generating millions of views online, and we're targeting young people, folks who are pro-abortion, who are mushy middle on this issue, to educate them on the gruesomeness of RU486 and the deadliness of this pill. So we're going to be doing a lot on RU486 and these chemical abortions. So if you go to thisischemicalabortion.com, you can sign a petition that's going to be going over to the FDA Commissioner, Health and Human Service Secretary, encouraging them to hold the line, but also check out the ad we're writing and spread it around, because honestly, we need to get our own base, the pro-life generation, aware that the chemical abortion pill is not birth control. This is an abortion. It's extremely painful. It is always deadly for a preborn child and sometimes deadly for the mother. So we need to spread the word. Thank you all for joining tonight. Thank you, Congressman.
You got it. Glad to be with you.